Good afternoon, and welcome to another installment of American Culture, Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences. Our program today is entitled The Geography of Appalachia. I'm lost without a map. My name is Michael Toomey. I'm the Assistant Dean for the School of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, filling in today for Dr. Martin Sellers, your regular host, who is regrets that he cannot be here, and I'll do the best I can to keep things rolling until next week when he returns. The program today is brought to you on WLMU Cumberland Gap Radio 91.3 FM.
Support for this program is made possible by Lincoln Memorial University in Harrogate, Tennessee. Further information on academics, campus life, educational program admissions, financial aid, much more at www.lmunet.edu.
Okay, and once again, I'm Michael Toomey. Our program today is going to focus on the geography of Appalachia. And of course, Appalachia is one of the focal points of the LMU mission statement. And so it is a part of that mission statement that we take very, very seriously. It's at the heart of what we do here. And Appalachia is a region that is defined, we think, in a large part by its geography. It's one of the things that makes it truly unique. So we've got a few folks with us today that can help us explore that topic. We have Dr. Jesse Gilley, Assistant Professor of Geography at LMU. We have Rachel Boyo, Instructor of Art, here as well. Rachel Schott, the Recruitment and Student Success Coordinator for undergraduate admissions. And we have joining us later on the telephone Sean Smith, a student in several of the geography courses here, and he'll tell you a little bit about why he is interested in geography and what he will hopefully do with some of that coursework that he's taking here. I want to give a special thank you to Gary Daniels, who is going to turn the knobs and keep us all on track here. His official title is Special Important Person in the World. we just gave him that. What I want to start with then is, first of all, let some of our guests introduce themselves, and then we'll look at the geography program at LMU, how it's structured and what it does and what we might hope it will do in the future. And then we'll look at some more specific questions about the geography of Appalachia and how it is connected to our mission and how it's connected to the coursework. But first of all, let me start off with Dr. Jesse Gilley, Assistant Professor of Geography. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing here?
Well, I am a geographer, as you stated. More specifically, I'm a human geographer. I study spatial interactions between people and the environment, people and other people. I'm particularly interested in how places are created, why people think places are important, geographical imagination, where people get their views of not only their places, but views of other places. So, like, how we differentiate between us and them. And of course, Appalachia is big in geographical imaginations in the U.S., as you know. And I grew up in Appalachia in southern West Virginia, riding roads and being scared out of my mind. And that's actually what led me to study road development for my dissertation. I guess it was kind of therapeutic to get over being scared with my father complaining that he couldn't see, and this impression I had that drivers were like swerving to the right side of the road to avoid him, and I'd just go to sleep in the back of the car, and back before they made you wear seat belts, and then kind of survive that trip. So that's why I chose road development, and of course everybody has roads. Right. So, and being a place geographer, I always thought it was important to study a place that I sort of know. Some people can just pick up and go somewhere else and learn about it, but I come from a humanistic background where I feel like I'm telling a story of my people, and I couldn't do that in a just manner if I studied someplace else. So
Okay.
very thrilled to be here.
Great, thank you. We also have with us Rachel Boyo, and I am, after a couple of years now, relatively confident that I've pronounced that correctly. She's an instructor in art and has a wonderful background in Appalachian culture and the people in the region. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do here?
Absolutely. Well, first off, I'm not from here. I'm not Appalachian. But what's funny to me is I find myself feeling more at home here than any place else in my life, and I love it. That's why I'm so dedicated to Appalachian studies. So for myself, I'm an artist, photographer, and documentary filmmaker. I, of course, teach here at LMU. One of my favorite experiences here at LMU was teaching Appalachian art last semester. In terms of Appalachia and the geography, at first I was sort of like, well, what do I have to say about that? I'm not a geographer. And then all of a sudden I just said, oh wait, geography. This is about Appalachian land. And I've got a lot to say about that because people here have a very special relationship to the soil that they work. It has shaped their culture in terms of what they cultivate and eat, what the various economies are here, and people here value the land in ways that I haven't seen elsewhere. It's priceless to them. It's steeped in their heritage. I was doing an interview for one of my documentary films last week with my friend Rick, and he told me, yeah, when I was little, I wanted to get out of here. I went up north to, make my fame and fortune, and I got there and I got a job, and then I told them I would stay as long as I needed to make the money to come back home to my mountains. But one thing I'd also like to note, my real specialty is, expertise in Appalachian music and crafts, not the land, but you can't separate that here.
Right.
It's all in the mix together. And one thing that I did want to note in terms of thinking about the geography is I just looked at a map. What is Appalachia? Now, a working definition of Appalachian geography comes to us from the Appalachian Regional Commission. And when you look at that map, it's so different than what people expect. Appalachia spans from Mississippi to New York. It's not just West Virginia. And that's fascinating to me. And also, I think it's interesting that the map of Appalachia is defined by economic forces in a large way because the Appalachian Regional Commission was created to respond to economic need in the area.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think you've touched on a lot of topics we're going to be talking about later on in the program. I also want to introduce to you Rachel Schott, who is our Recruitment and Student Success Coordinator here at LMU. And I want to let her tell you a little bit about what she's going to do today.
Well, I'm here just to offer as much expertise as I can on the university as a whole. And we have a lot of exciting admissions events going on, and it's the best time of the year for me because I'm seeing all the new students start to sign up for classes and get to talk to a lot of them about the different majors and the schools that we offer. So that's why I'm here today.
Okay. Later on in the program, we'll be joined by Sean Smith. I don't believe he's called back yet, so we're looking for him in just a minute. We'll let him introduce himself when he does call in. But let me go ahead and get started with a couple of quick questions to talk very briefly about the geography program here at LMU. And for that, of course, we'll turn to Dr. Jesse Gilley. And my first question, Dr. Gilley, is what exactly is geography? What do geographers study precisely? And what is their mission in life, so to speak?
Well, geography is a quite broad discipline. We take pride in complementing other disciplines. Historians such as yourself, your bread and butter is studying when things happen and the significance of when they happened and how that relates to things that happened in the past and then later on. Geographers, by contrast, focus on the where of things. We look at the world spatially and how things interconnect. So human-environment interaction is a big thing for geographers, and how people use resources and need resources. The creation of place is a big theme in geography. But geography is physical. There's physical geography. I teach a class here at LMU that's quite popular, and there we look at landforms, things like volcanoes, the weather, and like big weather events like hurricanes, river systems, how those things shape land, and and climate, and the when and where of that. And then there's also human geography, where we study cultures, how they develop. Migration is a big theme in that. Economic geography, where money goes, and investment. That's a big field as well. But thinking of the world spatially. In terms of Appalachia, studying Appalachia falls within a discipline called regional geography. And there are regional geographers at the University of Kansas where I studied. They have a big regional program where geographers study different parts of the world. Some of my friends were Africanists, some were Latin Americanists. I myself was trained under North Americanists, so we focused on North America. And then, of course, studying Appalachia would be a subfield in that. So, and it's quite fascinating as a geographer to study Appalachia, because we look at how Appalachia was actually connected to the rest of the country. It's seen as this isolated region, but in fact, it's always been connected. So that's a little bit of what geographers do.
Very good. And then briefly, before we go to break, tell us a little bit about the geography program here at LMU. What courses more specifically do you teach, and what sort of things do you offer students?
Okay, well, one of my popular classes, as I said, is physical geography. A lot of people take that class. I have a lot of education majors, business majors, folks who aren't science majors and they need a science class. They feel quite comfortable in my class because I try to tie geography to things that my students study and care about. So I take that student-centered approach. I also teach geography of religion, which I'm going to be teaching in the fall. We look at the development of the world's major religions and some lesser-known religions. Then I also...
What time is that class? I may join in that one.
Oh, yeah.
That sounds really interesting.
Starts at 10:10 Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
Okay.
So I enjoyed it quite a bit. I also teach an intro to geography class, which combines physical, economic, cultural geography. So it really is like a smorgasbord of geography.
All right, thank you very much. And I think we're going to take a really short break here and be back in just a few minutes. Once again, this is American Culture, Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences.
On Tuesday evenings here on WLMU, you can tune into Music City Roots, a nationally syndicated program that airs from the stage of the historic Loveless Cafe in Nashville, Tennessee. Music City Roots is recorded live and hosted by Jim Lauderdale. It features Americana, roots, rock, blues, string band, singer-songwriter, and other forms of American roots music. It's Music City Roots, every Tuesday night from 6 to 7, here on WLMU.
On Wednesday evenings, you can tune your radio to WLMU and hear the best blues in the tri-state area with your host, Gary Daniels. He'll be playing the best blues artists of today and the best blues artists of yesteryear. Everything from Robert Johnson, Buddy Guy, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Muddy Waters, and many more. It's Wednesday Evening Blues from 9 to 11, right here on 91.3 WLMU.
All right, we're back again. Once again, this is American Culture, Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences. And our topic today is the geography of Appalachia, lost without a map. My name is Michael Toomey. I'm filling in today for Dr. Martin Sellers. And I thought before we go back into our topic, I'd talk just a little bit about Lincoln Memorial University, where we are and what we do. Of course, we're located in Harrogate, Tennessee, in the shadow of the Cumberland Gap. I'm a historian myself, and there's no better place to be for a historian, I think, than in the shadow of a very historical site, and that's certainly, the Cumberland Gap certainly qualifies for that. There are 9 schools here at LMU: the DeBusk College of Osteopathic Medicine, the Kaler School of Nursing, the School of Mathematics and Sciences, the Carter and Moyers School of Education, the School of Business, School of Allied Health Sciences, the Duncan School of Law, the College of Veterinary Medicine, and of course the Paul V. Hamilton School of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences. Your host for today. And to talk a little bit more about the Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, the majors we offer, the minors we offer, and the various things that students can expect within this school, I thought I'd let Rachel Schott talk a little bit about that. Rachel?
Well, yeah, the School of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences is a wide group of folks, the faculty, the students, everyone. There are no two identical people for sure in our building. Over in Avery Hall, which is our home, and it's also the oldest building on campus, certainly the noisiest and usually the hottest, but that's okay. It's worth it. It's got lots of character, Avery Hall does. So in the School of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, we have art majors, media communications, criminology and criminal justice, English, history, music, philosophy and religion, political science, psychology, and social work. Those are all the major programs that we offer. We also offer a major in writing, which sort of falls under English, and it's also a little bit of its own thing there. We have some folks on staff who are very well versed in the writers of the Appalachia area, and as well as the business of publishing and that sort of thing. For minors, we have students from all over campus that come to minor in one of our programs. Some of them mix and match in a way that develops them as a person and really helps make them more marketable in the marketplace by, like I said, mixing and matching. One of the minors that we offer is geography. Obviously, that's what we're talking about today. We also have an ROTC program, which is sort of like minoring in military science. And we have a very wild and thriving theater arts program that is also available as a minor. I wanted to mention quickly that on April the 22nd, we're having a preview day, which is somewhat geared towards high school juniors, but certainly the whole community is welcome to come over to the Math and Science building. And each room, each school at LMU will have a different room where we'll have our things displayed and faculty and students can chat. So come on over on the 22nd of April and visit with all of us then.
All right, thank you very much. And I believe now we are joined by Sean Smith, a student here at LMU. Sean, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Great. Well, why don't you go ahead then and just introduce yourself and tell us something about who you are and what you're doing here at LMU and your connection to geography.
Okay, my name is Sean Smith. I'm a lifetime resident of Millsboro, Kentucky, and the area here. I'm an education major, so I'm a senior. I'll be student teaching in the fall, but I'm getting an endorsement in social studies for secondary. So I took the geography courses under Dr. Gilley. I started with the introductory course last fall, and then I followed up with the physical geography lab this semester. and it's excellent classes. Dr. Gilly is an excellent professor, and when I walked into his classroom, I immediately got the feeling that he cares about my success, and he's all the time checking in. Is there anything I can do to help you? Are you getting the material? And it's just I just really enjoyed the 2 courses that I've taken in Avery and geography.
What is the lab? How does that work? What is a geography lab like?
Well, you have the lecture. I have it 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but the lab is just 1 day a week. And it's more working on like skills. You talk about temperature, Fahrenheit, Celsius. We work with longitude and latitude. And you actually can work in groups. So you work with partners, like 2 or 3 people to a group, and he walks around. He'll help you if you have questions. It's a great way to take the content that you're learning in the lecture, and then you apply those skills to the lab. And they really piggyback each other very well.
Well, tell us something about how you see geography helping you into the future, aside from what you're going to do in the classroom. How does geography help you become a better, more well-rounded student?
Well, the area we live in is just, to me, if you live here and you don't love geography, then you're in the wrong spot, because it's just it's all around you. And I think some people that live here, they don't realize all the history and the great things that there are to experience about living in Appalachia and the Cumberland Gap. And to me, I took the courses because I have to pass 4 practice exams, which I've passed 3. I have 1 left before I start my student teaching, and geography content is all over those exams.
That's true.
And that's the biggest reason why I took them. And then once I got in there, because I didn't have to have the courses, but I took them anyhow, and now I realize that I enjoy them. And it's a class that I look forward to learn more about. We're talking about the weather and the mountains, and this morning we talked about volcanoes. It's so much knowledge that I had in elementary school, but I had forgotten so much of it over the course of high school and then coming into college. So it was a good refresher for me.
Good. Well, Dr. Gilly, I know you get to ask Sean questions all the time in class, but do you have anything else you want to ask him here right now?
No.
So Sean, you've got something to look forward to tomorrow then.
He's looking out for you.
All right. Well, Sean, I know you got to get back to class, and I do thank you for taking the time out to join us today. And we once again, thanks for being with us, Sean.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
All right. Let's turn back to Dr. Gilly again. I know you've mentioned the geography program here at LMU and what it is right now. It is a minor program at this point. Am I correct?
That is correct, yes.
Do you have any plans or thoughts or hopes? I know this is probably all speculative at this point. What do you think the future is for the geography program here at LMU?
We are seriously discussing making geography a major. Geography is it's an up-and-coming field across the country. There's a lot of support for geography education, and there's a need for it. So we are definitely discussing it. Employers say that students with geographic education, they make well-rounded employees, and people who are entrepreneurial benefit from it as well.
I hate to interrupt you, but that's a very important point you've just touched on, and that is assuming the student doesn't want to go on to graduate school, what are their job opportunities?
Well, there are opportunities in environmental geography, like students classmates that I knew at my past universities. A lot of them were graduates. They were my students when I was a TA and I was teaching classes. They went on to work for companies that do inspecting and cleanup of environmental issues. And I mean, it's a field where you could go out and get a job.
Okay. All right. Let me turn now to Rachel Boyo. And I know you're involved in a very interesting grant project. Is there anything you can share with us about how that's going, what it is you're doing?
Certainly. I love the project, so I'm glad to talk about it. I am project director of the Cumberland Gap Folklife Project, which is funded by the Tennessee Arts Commission and the National Endowment for the Arts. It is a partner of the White Lightning Trail Festival, and one of the most important results of the project is going to be completely new programming at the White Lightning Trail Festival this year, which is held on June 23 and 24 in downtown Cumberland Gap. It's going to have traditional music and heritage arts. What I've been working most hard on recently is it's also going to result, we've been doing tons of documentation of regional bearers of tradition, both in terms of music and the arts or handcrafts. It's going to result in a public television series. There are going to be 6 episodes. The first focuses on the relationship to parks and the land in this area. The second episode is going to be focusing on handcrafters, namely 2 locals named James Miracle and Joey Beeson. And when I talk about Appalachians and the land, this is how deep their traditions go. When we went over to make a dough bowl at James's last week, he said, okay, well, we got to get the materials. He let us out back, and he chopped down a tree in his backyard. Then he and Joey dragged it back in and started to work with the wood. That's a little segue. The third episode will be on old-time musicians, namely a ballad singer named Curtis Burge, who is going to be at White Lightning. Curtis was born legally blind and to this day cannot read or write, but he sings his heart out, and he's just a delight of a man.
Okay, I've heard you speak of that before. It is a very exciting grant project. I'm interested to see the White Lightning Festival myself. I've not been to one before. But in a bigger sense, let's talk about Appalachia, though, in terms of some of the images people have of Appalachia. I'm particularly interested in things like the stereotypes we often see. I know we're all familiar with, what are some good ones? The Beverly Hillbillies, to use a stereotype.
Honey Boo Boo.
Yeah, those kind of things. What is the basis? Why is America fascinated with that stereotype? Or are they? I mean, just either one of you would care to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it started during the War on Poverty, and there were a lot of well-intentioned people who came into Appalachia to document the poverty that was very real, and did so in the interest of helping people, but it took away people's pride to show them as impoverished. And it's very easy to show someone without shoes and you assume that they don't have the money for shoes, but maybe they were just plain. And I think a lot of that happened, and then it became a real tension as people from the outside came in. I feel blessed that I've been so welcomed by people here, but I think it's because I'm approaching my documentation of Appalachian heritage with the focus of cultural asset. What is so special about being here, rather than looking at poverty?
All right, we want to come back to that topic when we come back from a break, but now we are, I think, going to take another very short break. And once again, this is American Culture, Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences. We'll be back in just a moment.
Thursday evenings, you can tune in to the Thursday Night Jazz Cafe, where you will hear both traditional and contemporary jazz, along with big band and swing and the great crooners of yesteryear. The Thursday Night Jazz Cafe. The doors open at 9 p.m., and you will hear the best of jazz in the tri-state area till midnight and maybe beyond. The Thursday Night Jazz Cafe here on Cumberland Gap Radio.
Every Monday through Friday at noon, you can catch Midday Classics hosted by me, the Magic City Madman, Tyler Rowlett. It's a full hour of classic music from all genres. You'll hear classic rock, funk, soul, R&B, and lots more. It's a soundtrack to your lunch hour every Monday through Friday at noon, right here on 91.3 WLMU.
If you're a fan of bluegrass music, then our media partner, WCXZ, on the AM dial at 740, has the program for you, Bluegrass for Breakfast. Each weekday morning from 9 till noon, your host, Larry Carter, will serve you up a good mess of bluegrass. Everything old, new, and in between. That's Bluegrass for Breakfast on WCXZ, AM 740, and at 74WCXZ.com.
All right, welcome back. Once again, my name is Michael Toomey. I'm your host today for American Culture, Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences on 91.3 FM, WLMU, Cumberland Gap Radio. We were talking before the break about the concept of stereotyping in Appalachia, where it came from, what are some of the implications of stereotyping, and I'd like to see if Dr. Gilly, do you have anything you'd like to share with us about that as well?
Sure. Appalachian stereotypes go back hundreds of years. So Americans, everybody for that matter, often need what's called an other, which is somebody who's not you, who makes you feel better about yourself because there's somebody else who's worse off. And I often ask my students this. I love to revel in the places that they think are bad places, or places they don't go, or who they made fun of when they were a kid. Mm-hmm. And I make light of it, but it gets at this important idea that we create others. Appalachia was created as another, certainly at the after the Civil War, there was this view that there were these people who they fought for the Union, especially, and that they were white mountain folks, and there was the phrase mountain whites. And there was this idea that they descended from like the original settlers, and they were untainted by other immigrants and from technology and modernity, if you will, and that they lived a pure life. And that idea still comes around a lot today in our impressions of Appalachia. Okay, so in one sense, they were exotified as being these pure Americans, but at the same time, they were looked down upon as being lesser than America. It was another America. So, and there's a famous book, what was the name of that? They were people set apart, and isolated, and and that's how often othering, as it's called, goes on. And some things that perpetuated it were like color writers, like Fox, The Trail of the Lonesome Pine, and there were always these mean-spirited males and these women who needed to be saved, and you have some Yankee white guy who comes in and saves everybody. But it wasn't just fiction. There were also uplift organizations, or especially from churches, that would go into Appalachia and sincerely, in many cases, want to help them get out of their poverty and get out and become America, or be joined and uplifted to the rest of America. Of course, Appalachia was always connected to the rest of the U.S. There were people traveling there. There were trains, even before that connected Appalachia and goods. Maybe it wasn't as fast as in cities, but there was a lot of connectivity.
One of the things that is often associated with Appalachia is that very concept you just alluded to. That's the idea of isolation. Most people take it as a given that Appalachia was isolated for a very long time from the mainstream of America, and that explains a lot about what you see here. Do you buy into that? I gather that you may not.
Oh, no. It depends on the degree of isolation. Of course, when people think isolation, they think like entirely isolated, never seen anybody, maybe not even another family, much less somebody from another state,
Right.
or a civilized. There, I did the air quotes on the radio.
Y'all missed the air quotes.
You can't see that, so I'll do the air quotes for you.
He's still going.
But so no, railroads certainly connected people. There were books, newspapers. The mines brought people from all over the world, not just the U.S.
Rachel, I know your grant work's taken you over a lot of this region. Did you have any ideas in terms of do the folks around here perceive themselves as ever having been isolated, or is there a concept of that?
I don't really think so. I think if there is, it's generally that they chose to isolate themselves. I think there's also probably a weird connotation that comes with the term isolation that they wouldn't apply to hanging out at home and not coming out of the holler that much. They don't necessarily see it as a negative thing, as this term that other people assign to them. And I think also something I've been seeing is that there's people take offense. We were just talking about well-intending, like mission organizations that came in to help. And it's sort of, there's this feeling like, well, why do we need your help? We're happy. If you assume we need help, well, I don't want it. And I think a lot of it is some of the same issues that crop up when organizations go to help in third world countries, too. This assumption, you need our help. It's degrading.
I remember a story I heard quite some time ago. I can't remember the details and probably ought not to share it, but I'm going to anyway. A friend of mine lived up in Cocke County, and this is back in the 1880s or 90s. His church started receiving donations from some church in New York, I think it was, clothing and various things like that. And over the years, it continued to come, and they don't need it. They in turn have set up their own charitable organization, which they distributed to other people in urban areas. I think that's an interesting twist on what they get from a charitable organization in New York that they turn around and then give to some charitable organizations. I think it was in downtown Asheville, but like I said, I'm not certain about that. In any event, let's look at some other stereotypes, or maybe not stereotype is the right word, but perceptions, because I think we would agree that there are some things about Appalachia that are unique.
Absolutely.
And one of those, I think, is the Appalachian economy. Would either of you care to talk about economic development or lack thereof in Appalachia?
Well, I think there's always hope that there's going to be some new big thing come along, and it's kind of, I'll say naive, for lack of a better word, to always depend your hopes on the next big thing. But certainly what's happened in the past affects what's going on today. Like now there's hope that coal jobs are going to come back. Probably not going to happen to a big degree, though certainly some miners are going to get called back to work. But diversifying the economy, and there's one of the things where isolation does play a role in economics. Where I grew up in McDowell County, West Virginia, one of the poorest counties in the U.S.
Yeah.
I think it's 5th or 6th on the list by some
It's up
statistics. And it blew my mind as a grad student. I was doing a statistics project, and I just happened to see that where I grew up was one of the poorest counties in the country out of hundreds of counties. Well, the whole county is like this rugged terrain. There's no 4-lane highway in McDowell County. The main highway is just a curvy 2-lane road. There's hope to get a 4-lane, but even that doesn't guarantee that you're going to get development, because highways allow people to leave as much as it allows people to come in.
Yeah.
Like, the first thing I thought of when I thought there would be a road there is that, I can get to the big city of Huntington quicker. Like, where before it would take 3.5 hours, I can get there in less than an hour. And I think other people would think the same thing.
You know, I think you just got at a really important point, and I just want to jump in for a minute.
Sure.
You didn't self-identify as impoverished, yet you grew up in McDowell County, which, right, according to statistics, is. The poverty in Appalachia is real, okay? I mean, at the time the Appalachian Regional Commission was created, 1 in 3 Appalachians were defined as being impoverished. However, the stories I hear are of pride, because even if things were hard, people made do. They've always worked hard labor jobs, and they've worked hard to put the food on the table, and that's what they're proud of. And, you know, there is a lot, people now also romanticize, I think, a purer way of living where you raised all your own foods and put it on the table. You know, farming, coal mining, these are all difficult things that have kept the economy here alive. The poverty is real, but that doesn't mean that people need help necessarily from the outside. They really like to be able to provide for themselves.
Another aspect of Appalachia that people often point to, I think, is education as something that is either a challenge in terms of achieving it or acquiring it. And then the implication, of course, is most Appalachians are not terribly well educated. If you look at all the TV shows and books and color writers and so forth. I'd like to get your thoughts on that. I know Rachel Schott has done some research on education in Appalachia. Would you care to share that with us?
Sure. I'm just a baby in the research field, so I'm just sort of getting my fingers wet, I should say. But sort of what Rachel Boyo was just talking about, I, as a recruiter, even bump into that every day, where when you talk to students that come up and ask about LMU, it is a little hard, especially when they're surrounded by their parents, because I don't know, there's something about education and higher education as a leaving of what they have known before, which I'm proud of LMU, and we are Appalachian. LMU is an Appalachian school, so I'm proud that we serve Appalachian students well. But it is higher ed nonetheless, and I can see that struggle behind students' eyes when they're standing with their dad, who may be an unemployed coal miner, or and then inviting them to come and major in something that will allow them to be their dad's boss someday. That's tricky. One of the other things I've noticed in the beginnings of my research of Appalachian students is the concepts of equality and cooperation are so important in the Appalachian culture. The first church service I went to when I moved down here, I was just so thrilled and surprised that small children can get up and speak in church and are respected and listened to with as much care as the oldest member of the congregation. It's not necessarily the case in higher ed, when students come in and they're expected to maybe address their professors with a title that sets them apart. And the same with cooperation. I think it's such an important part of Appalachia, helping their neighbors survive. There's a certain degree of competitiveness in higher ed when you're supposed to do a project and get the best score that you can individually, and I think those are things that maybe LMU does a little better than other schools, but are still struggles nonetheless for Appalachian students getting their introduction to higher ed.
All right, thank you. We're going to take another short break and be back in just a moment. Once again, this is American Culture, Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences.
Every Friday night, we take it way back with Friday Night Oldies with your host, Gary Daniels. Gary will be playing artists such as Chuck Berry, The Beatles, Buddy Holly, and many more. You can catch them all right here on Friday Night Oldies on 91.3 WLMU. All right,
welcome back. Once again, this is Michael Toomey filling in today for Dr. Martin Sellers. American culture, arts, humanities, and social sciences. We're talking today about the geography of Appalachia, and when we left, we were discussing stereotypes and economic distinctions and various other things. I thought before the show was over, it would be very important to mention that we do offer here at Lincoln Memorial University a minor in Appalachian Studies. And as it turns out, yours truly is the director of that program. So I would be remiss if I didn't put a small plug in for it at least. But in point of fact, I do believe that Appalachian Studies is a very real asset to any major you want to take here, especially if you want to stay in the area. If you're a business major, history major, you name it. Adding that Appalachian Studies minor gives you a lot of depth and insight, especially I think the way this one is constructed. It draws coursework from a whole different range of programs, and it includes a small research component that allows the student to focus on some aspect of Appalachian culture or history that they find particularly interesting to themselves. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Rachel Boyot, who has taught a course in our Appalachian Studies program, Appalachian Art, and I'd like to let her talk a little bit about her experiences in that.
Sure, that was a really powerful experience. Mostly what I did in that class is I almost conducted it as a visiting lecturer series where I had local handcrafters and artisans come in to do demonstrations for students. A lot of them are old-time bearers of tradition, and having them do these apprenticeships with students ensured that there would be an intergenerational exchange and that important traditions would be preserved. And I think something that was also really important, I interact with students' parents too, and something that students' parents have loved, because there is that fear about them entering higher education, getting up above their raising and leaving. They were so thrilled to learn that we are a university that is teaching them, we're based upon traditional models of higher education, but we're also teaching them to embrace their heritage. They're teaching to love the way they were raised, even as they further themselves in their critical thinking and their goals for future employment. And one other thing I'd just like to add real quick, in terms of Appalachian Studies, something I do on my grant project, the Cumberland Gap Folklife Project that's been so wonderful, is I've used that to provide jobs for students. I have 6 students who work for me. They're mostly from here, and I've been using the funds to get them to go and do oral histories with their grandparents. Use that to embrace what's here. And that has been a really powerful experience for them. They continue to do apprenticeships with handcrafters and are learning the music of here. And for them, they didn't all grow up being proud of Appalachian. Some of them were ashamed of being Appalachian. One student, at the end of the Appalachian art class, she came over to me and said, "I'm proud of being Appalachian for the first time. I was always ashamed because of all the stereotypes." And her mother was that way too. And all of a sudden, she's quilting up a storm. And she's going to have a piece at the Arts in the Gap exhibit, which will be this June. There will also be a poetry reading on that occasion of poems by Emily Welch, who is writing poetry about where she grew up.
She's
and
one of
the
our
artists,
English majors.
Well, she graduated now,
did
but she
she?
works for
Okay,
me.
great.
She's my right-hand woman. And she is writing a series of poems about local local musicians like Steve Gully, who will also be performing at White Lightning, and some of the other handcrafters that I work with, and all of these people are going to be documented in the public TV series.
Dr. Gilly, you've also got a course that's offered in Appalachian Studies, the Geography of Appalachia.
I do have a course.
Yeah.
I have not taught it.
Oh, okay. Your time will come.
That it will. I look forward to it. But I'd like to just kind of play on what Rachel 1 or Rachel 2.
The more educated Rachel will say.
What she was saying about a sense of pride. I wasn't raised to have a sense of pride in Appalachia, and I especially not in my local area. I had to go into the Army and then come back to get a sense of pride. And I especially got a sense of pride in studying where I grew up by studying road development. So some people's sense of pride comes from learning about like traditional crafts. My sense of pride came from learning that for decades, going back to the 1920s and even earlier, that West Virginians were trying to make the state modern and saw themselves as being connected to the rest of the country. There was a big highway that I did my research on, the Great Lakes to Florida Highway, and it was steering tourists from the Great Lakes, the industries there, to the beaches in Florida, and hoping that they'd stop along the way. But in West Virginia, because in the 20s cars, you couldn't go that far before you had to stop. But there was also this sense of pride that we're connected, and that this is going to develop us economically. During those same years, there were wars like over coal mining, and that's a well written on, part of our history. But there were also, of course, they were the elites, the business owners, who were seeing West Virginia as a connected place. And I got a lot of pride from that.
We've talked a lot about Rachel Boyle's grant, but I understand you're involved in a grant here relating to Appalachia as well.
Yes, I am. It's called a Sensor Grant, which stands for Science Education for New Civic Engagements and Responsibilities. Professor here, Leroy Brandt, is heading that up. And what we aim to do is to help engage young students, elementary students, in environmental studies, environmental perceptions, teaching them that people care about the environment, but also to give them a sense of the environment. And the whole sensor philosophy is to help teach teach STEM subjects and with real world issues, and teach students to care about what they're learning so that they can go on and be good citizens, and not just learn science as a subject that's totally separated from their reality, which sometimes subjects, we compartmentalize what we learn and we don't know how to connect it to our real life. And this takes science, in this case environmental perceptions, and teaches kids that, hey, people care about their environment. It's not just something that happens, you have a stake in it. Mm-hmm. So history matters, but also you're making the world's history.
All right, Dr. Sellers now has a tradition on this show of asking a question that you're not expecting. And so I thought in terms of maintaining that continuity, I should perhaps do the same thing. So don't worry, there's nothing scary coming up here. But I thought I'd ask each of you the most important issue confronting Appalachia or Appalachians today. And I'll let whoever cares to start may begin with that.
Can I name two?
No, only one.
Only one?
Oh, go ahead, take two.
Okay. I think there are two. I think it's really important to figure out how we are going to preserve heritage and tradition, as we are now, we're in the 21st century, very much so. And I do see a lot of things fading away. The other thing I think we need to think about is the future of the coal economy.
Okay. Dr. Gilley?
Well, I don't know if this is what I think is the most important, having been given like 30 seconds to think about it. But certainly one thing that's been on my mind recently is rural areas and politics of rural areas, and that how we vote and who we support politically doesn't always coincide with who has rural issues in mind. So I think that's really important to care about rural issues and to support people who care about rural areas. And because if people aren't representing our issues, if we're not doing it and the people we elect aren't, then they're certainly not going to care about us. So that's something that's been high on my mind of late.
And Rachel?
I'll go only if you go after me.
Okay.
Because we're interested to hear what you have to say, too. The first thing that came to my mind was if we continue to fund schools from local and state money, the areas that are largely Appalachian are going to continue to lose out. And that makes it just so much harder for our Appalachian students to get the academic background that they deserve without the funding.
It's a good one.
Okay, well, hey, it looks like we're out of time. So
No.
I think a topic we mentioned earlier is as important as anything, and that's economics. I think Appalachian economy has been for quite some time kind of locked into sort of a colonial economy. Most of the money that is in Appalachia is not staying in Appalachia. Most of the money that's produced here goes to some owners somewhere else. And that's not true across the board. I think there's some wonderful exceptions just right down the road from us right here. But by and large, economic development in Appalachia needs to find some way to be Appalachian.
Absolutely.
And I'm not an economist. There's a reason I didn't do that. The reason I went into history is because I can't count more than 5 without going to my toes, or is it my other hand? But I do believe that economic development is very, very serious. Any final thoughts from any of you?
I think it's important to think about Appalachia as a region. We live here, and we don't often see images of Appalachia in the media that fit how we see our own lives and our own surroundings. I think it's important to critically think about Appalachia.
Okay.
I couldn't agree more.
Well, I want to thank our guests for being with us today, Dr. Jessie Gilley, Assistant Professor of Geography, Ms. Rachel Boyot, Instructor of Art, Rachel Schott, Recruitment and Student Success Coordinator in Undergraduate Admissions, Sean Smith, who phoned in and has since returned to class, I hope, and of course our radio staff, Gary Daniels, the special important person of the campus. I think that was the title we gave you. My name is Michael Toomey, filling in today for Dr. Martin Sellers, and this has been American Culture, Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences on 91.3 WLMU Cumberland Gap Radio.
Support for this program is made possible by Lincoln Memorial University right here in Harrogate, Tennessee. Further information on academics, majors, campus life, educational programs, admissions, financial aid, concerts and events, and much more at www.lmunet.edu.
This afternoon's program was produced by Dr. Michael Toomey, along with Dr. Martin Sellers. Our technical producer is Gary Daniels, and our student production assistant is John Hobbs, who is out today. Our program director is Clay Stanifer, and our executive producer is Adam Haley. Our theme music is White Horses, as performed by Tierra Negra and Muriel Anderson. Also, to note that some of the music that you heard today had an Appalachian theme. We heard from Jason and Ferris Romero. We also heard from Riley Bogus. We also heard from the Whiskey Shivers, Dirk Powell, and John Herman, Tim O'Brien, and I believe that was all of the Appalachian musicians that we heard from today. American Culture, Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences at LMU will rebroadcast again this Saturday at 10 a.m., Sunday at 8 p.m., and next Tuesday morning at 7 a.m. And this has been a WLMU radio production.